You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Is it still Friday?
Yep. And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
Hello.
Yep. And Brad Gullickson, mouth dork.
The end of the year is almost here.
That rhymed.
That rhymed, I know.
I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, and welcome to the It Modcast podcast, Fistful Friday, part 2 of our Not Top 10. All right,
so listeners may have gotten a break, but we have not, and my brain is straight up mush. I've got orphans standing before me saying, "Please, sir, may I have some more mush from yourself?"
Tell me about it.
And with that, we are at the back half of our not top 10. So we have 5 picks remaining. So these are our top 5 or not top 5 or top 5 not 5 of 2017. Brian, I'm getting loosey-goosey. Let's go, number 5.
All right. So my number 5. So from the last episode, I had split. Just to give you my placement, that was 23. So this one, as of right now, this is 22. And this is a film that I think I don't want to say divided, but there's differing opinions but just between us on the podcast from what I've heard about it. But I still think it's an important film to talk about. Wonder Woman. Yeah, Wonder Woman. I actually was just watching this today, actually, because I had a long commute home because people don't know how to drive when it snows. So I was like, let me pop a movie on and just prop my phone up. I was like, let me watch Wonder Woman. And I was watching the film, and I enjoyed the film when I originally watched it. And I've seen it twice. I saw it twice in theaters. But I love. We talk about it all the time as far as representation, whether it be for women, for Latinos with Coco, with African Americans coming up with Black Panther, especially in a lot of these big budget movies, to see ourselves in these heroes that we love. And I think it was just something. A cultural touchstone for this movie to come out, especially now with everything in light of everything that's been happening on the back half of this year, coming out of Hollywood with all the sexual misconduct and how women have been being treated, not just this year, but for decades, centuries, in all areas of the world and in life. But with that being said, I thought Wonder Woman was definitely an empowering film. I thought Gal Gadot was amazing as Wonder Woman. I loved her performance, that she was able to be this very powerful woman, but also have this vulnerability, have this sensitivity to her, and also have this sexiness as well. But it never yes, D. But it never takes away from who the character of Diana Prince is. I also liked when we get into the whole fish out of water thing, when we go back to what was it, to England, where they go, where was it, Europe, somewhere where
Damn.
London.
That's right, the bridge, that's right.
The bridge.
It's late, y'all, it's late. I'm just need y'all to hold me down. But anyway, yeah, when we get into the fish out of water stuff, I like those moments. To me, the naivete of Diana Prince in that second act also kind of found it a little empowering as well when you see that, because when she goes into those council meetings where, you know, the men there think that she doesn't belong and she starts to call people out, there's power in that, and seeing that in that moment, to have a woman do that in that time, in that era. But I don't know, there's just so many things about this film that I like, you know, outside of the third act with Ares, that I think, you know, a lot of that came from the studio having the all the special effects and the garbage throwing stuff and all that crazy stuff. The third act, like I said before, with these superhero movies, with the villains and the third acts, that's where they start to kind of lose me. But everything they've been building up, with the stuff that we see at Themyscira, which I thought was absolutely beautiful, with the journey that Diana Prince goes on, with her seeing, discovering the world, seeing the corruption of men, and then also realizing that she could be kind of like that beacon of hope and light to change, change mankind overall. So there's a lot of things I like about this movie, but I just like the representation that little girls, seeing those little girls in those Wonder Woman outfits going into the theater. This is going to be a movie that when they're women, grown women, 20 years from now, they're going to look back and say, this was the movie that, that changed me, that made me realize that, I could be that, I could do that. And I think that's something special, empowering about that.
All right. Lisa, your number 5.
My number 5 is also Wonder Woman, but for a completely, and I don't want to take away from anything that Brian said, because I do think that it is wonderful that there is now a movie with a female superhero at the center, and I do think that she is going to be a symbol and an inspiration for young women and old women alike. Mm-hmm. All women are gonna love it. But I was underwhelmed by this movie, and I felt a little bit left out in the cold by how much everybody else loved this movie so much. And I thought that since we've been building up to having a Wonder Woman movie, having a female superhero, I just felt like we were owed a little bit better and a little bit stronger even. I don't want to take away from Gal Gadot's performance. I think that she is the perfect Wonder Woman. She is beautiful and she is strong, and I feel that the way that she plays Diana is, multifaceted, but I just wasn't a huge fan of this story. I mean, I loved all of the stuff on Themyscira. I thought it was absolutely beautiful and strong. But then as soon as Steve Trevor is introduced into the story, I really did feel like their partnership took away from her power, and that a lot of what she was doing was reactionary to Steve Trevor and being kind of led around by him to a certain degree. And there are instances like in that meeting where she speaks out, but she is quickly quieted, and her naivete, I thought, extended too far, and that she was too innocent for too long. And going into that third act, she quits. She gives up for a moment, and then Steve Trevor is the one to kind of pull through in that instance and continue to fight, and then she is then inspired by him to continue to fight. And I wish that they hadn't even introduced Steve Trevor into this initial story. I wish we had a story about Diana, about the Wonder Woman, without this influence, this male influence on the story. And I don't like how it carries over into the Justice League. How
that I don't like.
Heartbroken over Steve Trevor, so she's more or less quit being a superhero. And I don't think that is the way that the end of Batman v Superman played her story. Mm-hmm. Like at the end, she was being like some kind of hip international spy going undercover and working for good. You know what I mean? But then it turns out that, she's more or less just kind of been pining for Chris Pine. Pun not intended. I do love the fan reaction. I love that this is going to, blossom out into hopefully more female-driven film and more female directors, and all of that wonderfulness. I think the only goodness is going to come from the cultural touchstone that is the Wonder Woman film. I think that there are things that are being excused because of the representation in this film, and I won't stand for it. I just won't. And it can get a little lonely, I guess. So that's why it's my number 5.
I feel you, and I think that's kind of dangerous too. Like if you like excusing that, like making excuses for the film, but because I mean you should hold it as just as high a standard as you would anything else. And I think, but I also agree. Like I could do without the Steve Trevor thing. I wish she could just be strong on her own merits and not because of like a dude. Like why couldn't she just be in love with people or life? Why did it have to be the love of like a guy?
Humanity.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
I think that it didn't help that I was going into this movie totally high off of the new 52 Wonder Woman, where she really is interacting with the gods and finding her own way in this place where the gods meet humanity and how that affects her, and she's making a lot of decisions, and she's very much in charge. I mean, goddamn, she ends up the god of war, and you don't miss the love story that's required for a female-driven movie.
Yeah.
And I love a love story. Nobody loves kissing more than me, and I do think that we could have the Steve Trevor character with her still being a decision maker and an active person. And I'm sure that there are women out there and men who can go point for point against what I'm saying. And it might just be a matter of perspective. I haven't been a huge fan of the DC films just in general. Yeah. So I might be coming from a biased place, but that being said, I mean, it is my opinion. And I do think that there is an impeccable female-driven, big-budget superhero film to come.
Yeah. All right. Brad, your number 5.
Lisa, we had it already. We had it all the way back in January with Resident Evil, the final chapter. I love this series. If you've been following our podcast at all for the last 3 years, you've heard me defend, not apologize, for the Resident Evil franchise. And I felt that Paul W.S. Anderson and Mia Jovovich really came to a satisfying conclusion to their series. It's the kind of franchise that we'll go down one path, decide, we don't like that. Let's stop. Let's either change that immediately or forget about it. But ultimately, the final chapter concludes the Alice story in a satisfying way for me. It helps that they bring back Ian Glenn as Dr. Isaacs. He is truly demonic in this film. I love that crazy super tank that he stands atop, and he trails an army of undead creatures behind him. I love the imagery of this movie. I think, Paul W.S. Anderson was trying to do something a little bit different with his direction. It was certainly choppier. It was certainly more frenetic than previous attempts. But at the same time, I also thought it was fresh and exciting. And I'm a sucker for it, and I'm probably the only person on the planet who loves it as much as I do outside of this married couple making crazy zombie movies. But don't worry, you're going to get your own version of this franchise probably sooner rather than later. And I hope it satisfies all you video game geeks out there. But for somebody who never played the game and who just kind of fell in love with this hero character and this performance, I think it's just a ton of fun. I love these movies unabashedly.
All right. I am not surprised to see that on your list. My number 5 is the Japanese anime Your Name, directed by Shinkai Makoto, which happens to be my middle name. Um, this I got to catch this one in the theaters this year, and fortunately, I live in an area where I have a few theaters, specifically the Angelica, that shows anime on the big screen. And every once in a while, I'll catch a title that really sticks out and is more than just a new Pokemon movie or something like that, which I don't have a problem with. See to see those, but this one is one that resonated with me a lot after seeing it. And it's two strangers who find themselves linked in a bizarre way. There's a country girl who lives in a farm area of Japan, and she longs for a faster life in the city. And there's a young boy who lives such a life in the city in Japan, and they end up through some strange supernatural phenomena switching bodies at random points for different periods of time back and forth. And over the course of the film, they come to know each other while living each other's lives, and they communicate with each other and take notes to let each other know what they did that day or for that duration of time, so that when they return to their own bodies, they can pick up and not have their life thrown in disarray. So just the story of these two people. I guess it's a love story, but unconventionally, in that in most like romantic comedies or love stories, the two people meet, they find out about each other together, and then something happens, they pushes them apart, and then they realize they need each other, and then they work to get back together. Well, this story, the people meet in a different way in that they don't technically meet face to face. They learn about each other by living in each other's shoes and then returning to their own and seeing how the other person affected their life. And it's I don't want to spoil like how the story plays out, but it's so well done and it's so unexpected, but it's really heartwarming, unique, and different. And I appreciate it so much, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to see it on the big screen. I talk about this film a lot because it's definitely worth seeing, even if you aren't a fan of anime. It's just a good movie. It doesn't fall into a lot of stereotypical anime tropes, but it does have a lot of heart, and there's a slight melodrama towards the end. But I think that it serves the film and the story well. So yeah, that's my number 5. I almost had this in my top 10 list, but there were unfortunately other films. So these next couple of films, these next 5 films I'm going to talk about, are the ones that didn't make it because they just got bumped out by films that stuck with me and played over in my head with more and more. So yeah, that's my number 5. Your Name. Brian, your number 4.
All right, so my number 4 is a film that currently sits at 20 on my list. So this is part of my top 20. And just like with Logan, how I was saying that it's a film that everybody loves that I'm just not on board with. This, I believe, or at least with the dorks here, is a movie that I just absolutely love. And I know you guys are really probably haven't even thought about this movie or don't care less or whatever the case may be.
King Arthur?
Yes.
Oh,
yay! Legend of the Sword. I absolutely love this movie. I just, I can't, there's some movies that, and I talked to Darren about this a lot. Like, I'll be ashamed to talk about it because maybe I might be the only person that likes this movie, or I feel like I'm on this island by myself. But then there's some movies like when I watch it, and I just know how I felt when I watch it and how I feel when I continue to watch it. And I'm just like, you know what? It don't matter. I like this movie. I really like this movie. I can't help it. I mean, it is so much fun. I love the opening. I love the energy of this film. It's got Guy Ritchie written all over it for me. It's like I don't know. I thought Charlie Hunnam was great. I thought the pacing of the film really worked. Are all aspects of the movie, do they work? No. Some of the stuff with Jude Law, I like his character, but some of his stuff there doesn't really work as well. I mean, a lot of the times I like to kind of just stay with, King Arthur and his like just band of characters and just kind of watch them. And then the score by Dan Pemberton, he did the score for a couple of other Guy Ritchie films, but this one is just so pulse pounding. Like I it's the one score. I literally downloaded this on my iPhone while the credits were rolling in the theater, and I've been listening to it ever since. There's just such an energy that I love about King Arthur. Yeah, I unabashedly love this movie. I really, really do. So, yeah, man, it's number 20 right now. I don't know if it'll stay there, but it's in my top 20.
If I could go back in time and re-record any review cast from this year, I wish we could re-record the review cast of King Arthur. Because, man, was my heart just not into talking about that movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were so in love with it. And I just feel like I did a disservice by being so anti your opinion.
Well, no, I mean, but that happens. I mean, I know because we were on the fence as far as whether we should do a review, but I guess maybe I misjudged the reaction that all four of us had about the film. Because of course, coming out of a film, we're always looking on social media and Letterboxd and stuff like that. And maybe I misjudged how everybody else was feeling. And I think I threw it out there like, hey, yeah, let's do a review cast, thinking that, we're going to have a lot of fun talking about this film. And then, to my surprise, I get there and everybody's kind of shitting on it. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what's going on?
It was more than just shitting on it. It was just like we were so actively not engaged with that episode.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. I understand people's opinions, but I'm not oblivious to why some people may not respond to this movie. But for me, it works. As a Guy Ritchie film, it works. And then just the characters like Charlie Hunnam, I don't think he hasn't been better in a film, especially coming off of like Pacific Rim. I thought he was really good in this movie.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought he was charismatic. And the score. I really had a lot of fun watching this movie.
I need to rewatch this movie because of you.
Well, I'm glad
the 4K disc is pretty dope.
Yeah. Own your love, Brian.
Oh no, believe me, I get that from you, man. At least I can. At least I feel good that I inspired you to watch, to do a rewatch, whether you like it or not. At least.
All right, Lisa, your number 4.
My number 4 is actually my first Fantastic Fest film to be on my not top 10 list, and my only Fantastic Fest film on this list, actually, as I look ahead. But this is a film that I liked despite everybody around me just not digging, and that is Downsizing.
I dug that movie so hard. Yay!
I wish I was sitting next to you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see that. That comes out next week. I'm gonna check that out.
I was sitting next to Emily Sears, and I'm sure she will not mind me calling her out for not liking this movie, because she did not like it. And it was with all of her other cool birth movies, death people, and they're wonderful, and they're all great. But I felt like such a rube really liking this movie. So I'm not going to spoil it, because it doesn't officially come out until the 22nd.
Damn.
So I'm not going to do the thing I've been doing up until this point of just I'm going to summarize the whole movie and then tell you my feels. So I'm gonna be a little bit more careful with the spoils. But the movie is about we've reached a point of both environmental and economic crisis as a planet, and there's like one Swedish scientist who's come up with a solution, and the solution is downsizing, taking a human person and shrinking it down to like 1/16 their regular size. And then at that size, you'd need less resources. Duh. A person who is, 8 inches tall or whatever doesn't need so much water. For some reason, I love how much this tickles Darren. He loves the idea of tiny people. He really does. And it's great too. I've always thought that a really great Halloween costume would be a shrinking person, and you would just come to the party with like a regular sized pencil, and then throughout the party you just replace it with bigger and bigger pencils until you have like a 6 feet tall pencil, and you'd be like a shrinking lady. So I've always had I've always also had a fascination with shrinking. Oh, and also with the story The Borrowers. Did you ever read The Borrowers?
Oh, yes.
I loved
Oh goodness, yeah, I read that as a kid. Yeah.
So the idea of being tiny is just cool. But another element is when you are small and your resources are shrunk down, that creates this inflation of the income that you already have. So now the middle class, when shrunken down, can live at this to a level that they would previously consider extraordinary wealth. And so now, if you have a $30,000 income, it translates to a $3 million income. And so these tiny people, they're moved into kind of an exclusive neighborhood, and they get all of these perks. So the idea of the story, without giving too much away, is that you can't have this paradise without having some class discrepancy. So, it doesn't matter if now all of a sudden, you have a $30 million house in tiny people money, because there's still somebody who's going to need to mow your lawn. You know what I mean? And those people will also need to live somewhere. So that's one of the themes. And another one of the themes is the idea of, is being an idealist for everybody. And that's kind of at the center of Matt Damon's story and Kristen Wiig's story. They play the couple, and they're forced to ask themselves, am I ready to realize my ideals and live this extreme life? More for Matt Damon than Kristen Wiig. But so that's kind of what the story is about. But I found it legit funny. I found it funny. I found it interesting, like an interesting thought experiment. Mm-hmm. I thought it was thoughtful. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the Christoph Waltz character. He plays Dusan Mirkovic. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of like this like playboy guy who's decided to make his money importing big people things and shrinking them down. There's a lot of comedy of like gigantic bottles of vodka with a tiny person standing next to it. How is that not fun? So I really enjoyed this movie, and it's kind of weird because it was the last movie of Fantastic Fest, and so to kind of. So, like, I was emotionally and physically exhausted at that point. Yeah. And then to end with kind of this, like, lonely feeling of, oh, I liked it. And then everybody gets on buses and goes to a party. Like, I'm just like, it's weird. It's weird and a lonely feeling. But I like that movie, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Me too.
I'm going to see it again in the theaters.
I love Hong Chow as Ngoc Lan Tran.
Absolutely.
She was my favorite character. I loved her so much.
Udo Kier.
Oh, man. He
yes.
was great in it.
There's so many. Jason Sudeikis is in this movie. Yep. Like, there's so many wonderful characters where if we talk too much about them, then we're going to spoil the movie. Oh, yes. But, yeah. So I don't want to talk too much about the individual characters, except that everybody's wonderful. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
And there are parts that really edge on beautiful. Like, it's a beautifully shot film. There's something I'm gonna spoil it, never mind. It's beautiful.
This is the the way the dorks feel about this reminds me of our love for Batman v Superman last year. We're all pro downsizing, and the world is anti.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how it's going to be received on wide release. I don't know. Probably not well. I don't know. I really.
I hope it gets received well, but All right.
My second Matt Damon movie on my not top 10.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I like Alexander Payne, just off the strength of the Descendants. I absolutely
Very
love
different, Brian.
Very different.
Yeah. But I think you'll like it. I think you'll like it.
Yeah.
We liked it.
Brad, what's your number 4?
So for my number 4, I am picking my biggest disappointment of the year. In the previous episode, I talked about Thor Ragnarok and how that was my most anticipated film for 2017 and how it didn't quite live up to those expectations. But my most anticipated film of the summer was the directorial debut of Taylor Sheridan. He was the screenwriter of Sicario and Hell and High Water. His directorial debut is Wind River, starring Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner. And it's the story of this veteran tracker played by Renner. He works for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and he comes across a dead Native American woman on the reserve. It's important that he hunts the animals that roam the reserve. And it's about how he aids in the investigation of this very naive FBI agent played by Olsen. And, the crime itself ultimately ends up being, it's compelling. The mystery it will have you guessing, and the reveal is surprising but maybe not interesting. There's a last minute cameo that I really loved, and I thought that actor's performance was in line with all these other performances that I have been ranting and raving about on this podcast, but I will not say who it is here, even though I think I've revealed it on a previous Weekend Dork episode. But my problem with this film, and I could not shake it, was, we've been talking about representation. And here's a story of 2 white heroes coming to aid the Native American people on this reservation. And it just did not sit well with me. And I couldn't figure out, why is Jeremy Renner the Fish and Wildlife tracker? Why didn't they get a Native American actor to play this character? They gave him a backstory where he was married to a Native American woman and had a child, and he's now divorced. And they keep revealing how he understands the people of this reservation. And I found it kind of ugly, and it could have been solved so easily by casting an American actor. And I know I've talked to lots of people who consider this one of the most underrated films of the year. But I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake that frustration.
Well, I have yet to check it out. Actually, after your review, I was looking forward to it, but then after your review, I was like, maybe I'll wait till it comes on Netflix.
Yeah, and the thing about those other Taylor Sheridan films, Sicario, so much of that film is about the performances, certainly, but the director and the cinematographer. And same with Hell or High Water. That film is gorgeously directed as well. And Wind River feels like a first-time movie. It's not as polished as his previous 2 screenplays were adapted.
All right. My number 4 is The Florida Project. It's filmed by Sean Baker, the director of Tangerine, a film that we here at Modcast really, really love. And I was very excited to see his follow-up feature film, and I got a chance to catch that earlier this year. And I had a tremendous time with this film. I love the film. It's not necessarily like a fun film, but in the way that Tangerine follows people um, on a down to earth level, follows people who feel real. In this case, follows a group of kids, one in particular, and her day to day life during the summer at this particular, at a motel. Her and her mom, her single mother, her young single mother live in this motel. And it's about how the kid sees the world, and her world in particular, and her immediate surroundings. And I just found it incredibly moving and sad, and at times hard to watch. But it helped that it was grounded by some very real performances. And Willem Dafoe is absolutely, he's worth the price of admission alone. Like, he's so great in the film, and a different Willem Dafoe that I'm used to. I'm used to seeing him be, I'm used to Grand Budapest Willem Dafoe, or Dog Eat Dog Willem Dafoe, like crazy Willem Dafoe. But this Willem Dafoe he's so warm, he's so kind, he's so patient, and he cares about these kooky residents of this particular motel that at times like stress him out, give him a hard time, but he genuinely cares for people. And you need people like that in the world to balance out the creepy old pedophile guy that's coming up approaching the kids as they play out by the picnic table. You need a balance in life. And so I don't know, like, his character was a warm welcome in this film. And I don't know, like, I can understand like how some people might have a hard time with the film. It does deal with a type of people that usually aren't normally represented in film, from a particular side of life, or a side of the track, so to speak. But I think, like Lisa was saying, with My Life as a Zucchini, as far as seeing a representation of people that may not have the kind of upbringing or life or lifestyle that you yourself have, and to try to find, if not some empathy, but just at least a recognition that they are there. They exist. They do live not too far from you, or they live right outside of Disney World, like right across the street. There are people who are, having their dreams come true, meeting their princesses and visiting castles and things like that. And then, here we have this little girl who, spends her days with just her friends in this motel, and maybe a not necessarily safe part of town. So I don't know. It was very eye opening and an interesting film that I really feel like just lends more credibility to Sean Baker as an up and coming filmmaker. So as before with Tangerine, I'm really looking forward to what he does next, based off of that Tangerine film, and also the Florida Project. One of my favorite films of this year, but just not quite top 10 worthy yet. But yeah,
that's your second Willem Dafoe movie on your list.
Yep. Yes, it is. I love that guy. Brian, your number 3.
So my number 3 is actually on my number 17 as of now on my list for top movies of 2017. And that would be a movie that I was not interested in seeing at all, because of my own, I guess, stereotypes, or not stereotypes, but prejudices that I have against these type of movies. But it actually kind of just I don't know, it passed all my expectations. And thanks to Darren, who saw it first, it took me about a month or so to catch this movie, and I think it's the funniest movie of the year.
Yay!
And, Girls Trip.
Yay!
Girls Trip was very surprising to me, because this was not a film, while watching the trailer, as something I would have thought to myself that, this was something that would be on my list, or something that I would end up being one of my favorite movies of the year. But You got to hand it to this cast. I mean, Queen Latifah, Jada Pinkett, and oh goodness,
Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany Haddish, and
Queen Latifah.
no. Old girl from Scary Movie.
Oh, Regina Hall.
Regina Hall. I can't want to say Regina King, but that's the other girl from Friday. Regina Hall, yeah, and Regina Hall is really kind of like the anchor and the heart of this story. Everything kind of really surrounds her, and her relationship with Luke Cage, Mike Coulter, and just the shit that she has to go through dealing with that to keep up this facade and this persona, but really just shows the camaraderie of these four women going on this trip to New Orleans for the Essence Fest. And Tiffany Haddish she's the breakout star of the year, just the absolute breakout star of the year. I did not see how fun, and she's been around for a while, but she is just hilarious in this film. But even with all the raunchy humor and the hilarity that's in this movie, there's just so much heart in the middle of this film that Malcolm D. Lee, the director, was able to bring out into this movie. And I think having Essence Fest in New Orleans as a backdrop really helped with that. And then also some strong supporting characters by some male actors. I know Lorenz Tate was really, really good in it as well. And it's just a fun movie for me to revisit. I saw it once in theaters. I think I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times on Blu-ray since I've gotten it.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, it's just one of the movies I literally could put on in the background and just leave it on, and then just watch just random scenes as they come through. And I mean, like I said, to me, it's the funniest film of the year. It's raunchy, and it's great to see like raunchy comedies with women, and it's not degrading or anything like that. I mean, another film that came out this year I haven't seen was Rough Night.
Damn, that was this year. I watched that this year.
How's that on your worst list, Darren?
Ouch! I totally forgot about it. Damn.
But for what everybody was saying about that movie, it feels like Girls Trip was. I mean, that movie was trying to be what Girls Trip ended up being.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't know. It's just such a fun movie to watch. And to get Tiffany Haddish, man, like, you know, people finally know what it means to grapefruit.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you know, so hey, you know, it's for all you kids out there. When you learn what grapefruit is, go ahead and knock yourself out. Have some fun.
Oh my God! So, because of you guys, I finally watched it, and you know, I had seen Rough Night and was just put off by that entire style of comedy. Mm-hmm. So I didn't catch this in the theater, but man, is this so much better than Rough Night? Mm-hmm. It is crazy funny. I highly recommend it as well.
Yeah.
All right, Lisa, your number 3.
My number 3 is probably my least favorite movie of the year. Yeah, we finally got to it. If you thought I wasn't negative Nelly enough on this list, here it comes. And that is Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets.
Oh.
That movie was the worst. And it was our Comic-Con movie.
Yeah.
And so we went to see it with our Comic-Con buddies, Aisha and Fatima and Miriam. Mm-hmm. And the entire time I'm watching this movie, I was going, are we all hating this movie? But of course, we're all like really faithful film fans. So we're like silently watching this movie. And I'm just, you think it can't get any worse. And then it just is the worst. And I'm so uncomfortable. And so that movie ends and the credits start. And I just turned to Aisha and I go, that was the worst, right? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, thank God. It was so awful. Now, I had my suspicions from the trailer. Mm-hmm. How did we feel about the trailer?
Oh, goodness. I'm trying to remember it.
I mean, it's such a visually stunning movie. And I really do feel like if I hit mute on this film, I could enjoy it.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Yeah.
The story does not live up to the potential of the visuals.
And it just to me, like, I just see that and I just see bleeding money. It's like such like a monetary waste.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that Dane DeHaan and Cara Delevingne. I need to ask Brian how to pronounce all of these before we start. I know that they're doing their best, but like, it's just the worst.
You know what I'd say about this film, though, Lisa, is the opening credit sequence was truly moving.
It's so great.
What's the opening credit sequence?
Where you see the building of
the city. Yeah, of 1,000 planets. Yeah, I thought that was intriguing, the way they were able to establish.
It was beautiful. It was just a bunch of different people coming together and shaking hands and agreeing to live together in peace.
Star Trek moment. And I swear to God, I'm not lying. I know I talk about crying a lot on this podcast, but I was tearing up during that sequence. And then the movie started. And I was like, no.
It's incredibly moving. But then everything from there, like, I'm staring at the cast list, like, trying to remember what even happened in this movie. Ethan Hawke. Do you remember that Ethan Hawke was in it?
Yeah, he was Rihanna's pimp.
He was Rihanna's pimp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Herbie Hancock was playing a part. He's not an actor. Go home, Herbie Hancock. You're sucking it up. Go sit at your piano and do your job. It was just bizarre. The whole thing was bizarre and uncomfortable.
All right. Well, it was worth it for that 5 minutes. So you going off on it. So
that was our second Luc Besson Comic-Con movie.
Oh, yeah. We don't have a good track record with
Lucy.
that guy.
Yeah.
All right.
I walked out of Lucy.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Brad. What's your number 3?
So for my number 3, I talked about this film early on in the year. And when we did our review of it, I said that if this movie did not land on my top 10 list, I would be stunned. And right now, it currently sits at number 16 on my top 25 films of 2017. And that is Gore Verbinski's A Cure for Wellness.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Lisa talks about feeling lonely with downsizing, and I feel equally as lonely with A Cure for Wellness because it was not as well received as I would have liked. I found it to be creepy, disturbing, ugly, antagonistic, scary, slimy. Dane DeHaan also, from Valerian, used to a much better effect in Cure for Wellness as this pasty ladder climber who wants to join the ranks of the board of his corporation by traveling to this European location, this wellness center, where one of the chairmen has basically gone missing within. And he enrolls himself as a patient to figure out, where is their chairman, and bring him back to the United States. And the wellness center is all about purifying the body and drinking glassfuls of water, one after the other, glug, 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 glug. But there's some shit in the water that you probably don't want to know about. And Gore Verbinski's one of the most stylish directors, and say what you will about his filmography. I know people see a lot of clunkers in there, The Lone Ranger and all that, but the man can shoot a film like nobody else, and his eye accentuates the terror and the horror of this place. And it is a slow movie. I mean, it takes its time. And if you're not engaged with the film, I understand that you want to go running from the theater. But I recognize the slowness and its intensity of pace. But as it builds to one of the most bonkers and bizarre climaxes that on the surface kind of flies in the face of the tone of the rest of the movie. It becomes this wild Vincent Price, Roger Corman 50s horror climax, and at the center is Jason Isaacs' mad performance. This guy has had a killer year at the movies. Between this and his tiny role in The Death of Stalin, and his Captain Lorca on Star Trek Discovery, this has been Jason Isaacs' year. And his reveal at the end of this movie, I was just like, yes, House of Wax, high five. This movie gets me. This is my kind of horror film, and it is my favorite horror movie. Just straight Halloween horror movie of the year. I think it's stunning.
All right.
And it's my 16th. What?
I know.
All right. My number 3 is I'm gonna go with
Darren's still making his list.
No. Logan Lucky. This was a film that was not on my radar prior to it coming out. I think I maybe heard about it and then maybe saw a trailer. I think it was late in the game that I even realized it was a Steven Soderbergh film. But I ended up checking it out. I think that day, I'm pretty sure, was like I did like a double or triple feature. But I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not a fan of the NASCAR sport or the culture or whatever, but this film takes place around that. Channing Tatum is a single parent, and that was, the opening of the movie is establishing his relationship with his daughter, and obviously from that scene on, I was sold, and I just continued to fall in love with the rest of the film. And it's a heist film. It's Ocean's 11 meets NASCAR, and Adam Driver is a great role in. He plays Channing Tatum's brother, and I don't know, it just has a great cast. Riley Keough from Mad Max Fury Road is in the film. Daniel Craig is in the film, and he's great. It's complete with a Game of Thrones reference in the movie that plays a particular plot point in some negotiations, and so I don't know, like the film has heart, it has comedy, and I don't know, it was just a well-made, nice and lean movie that was something that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I did. I can't wait to watch it again. It's out on Blu-ray. I haven't picked it up yet. I haven't done enough Blu-ray shopping. I'm not on Brian's level yet, but I'm going to try to make up for it before the end of the year. And this is one that I will have on my shelf before 2018 rolls around. But if you haven't seen it, it wasn't in theaters for a long time. And I don't know that it had a huge marketing push. Soderbergh's films usually don't. But it really is worth checking out. I find it highly entertaining. So I recommend it. If you can see it, check it out. I know it's on VOD now. But yeah.
I gotta say, Darren, I'm surprised this didn't make your top 10 list.
I'm surprised too. But when you see my top 10 list, you'll be like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I understand. But yeah, it came really close. But yeah, this one and my number 1 were surprises that didn't make on my top 10. But it's been a great year for movies. Brian, your number 2.
So my number 2 is on my top list, top 25 top movies. It's currently sitting at number 14, and this is a movie that I don't think anybody saw, but it was, no, you guys did, you missed it. It was at the most recent Lost Weekend. I think you guys were flying back from Fantastic Fest, and we saw this at Lost Weekend, and it's a foreign film, another small film. I'm trying to remember what country. I don't know, I want to say either China or Korea, but it's called This Is Not What I Expected. It's a movie about food and restaurants, a la Chef. I'm discovering something about myself that I love these type of movies. But it's on Netflix now, and if we, 'cause I know we changed the format of our shows, but if we were continuing to do the homework episodes, this was going to be the one that I was going to give to Darren because I don't think he's seen this one yet, and I think it would have been a pretty good discussion to kind of talk about this film. But I do suggest that you guys check this out since it is on Netflix now. But it's really about these two people, Lee Jen, played by Takeshi Kaneshiro, from like House of Fire.
I like that guy.
Yeah. He's really good in this movie. And actress, the character's name is Sheng Nan, and it's an actress. I want to pronounce this right, Dong Yu Zhao. And she is so adorable in this movie, and it is such a heartwarming, feel-good movie. It's basically, he plays like this CEO who goes to like these hotels to like buy these hotels, and she's like a sous chef in one of the hotels, and something happens. There's like an inciting incident that something happens that he basically puts a tracker on her, basically like a restraining order against her, so she has to stay away from him. But he is fascinated by the dishes that she makes, so every time he eats her food, he doesn't know that it's her. So it's like they have this kind of symbiotic relationship through food, but when they see each other in person, they just have this very kind of just really antagonizing relationship. And it's so much fun to watch, especially in the first act of this film. It's just so delightful. It is just a delightful film, and it just kept me smiling from ear to ear. I absolutely love this movie. And I just rewatched it like this week, I think, earlier this week. It was on Netflix because I'm trying to rewatch a lot of the films that are in my top list to just find the placement of where I want to put it. So right now it's sitting at 14, and it may change, it may go up or down, but it's definitely one of my favorite movies that I've seen this year. And yeah, I just like discovering these little gems, whether they're indie films or foreign films or whatever the case may be. And this one just caught me off guard, and it was just a pleasant surprise. So thank you, Lost Weekend. Thank you, Andy, for bringing these movies to us, because it's great discovering these type of films.
Yeah, I need to see this.
All right. He's Takashi Kashinero. He's been doing a lot of Hong Kong films. And Takashi Kashinero, he's Japanese.
Yeah, I was looking on IMDb. He's like half Japanese, half Taiwanese. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a Chinese production.
Right.
Okay, Chinese production. Okay.
Yeah, but he was in that House of Flying Daggers, also in Hong Kong. Dragon, that Donnie Yen movie, Brad, when he plays a detective and Donnie Yen's trying to hide off in that village. Yeah, but I love him. He's one of my favorite Japanese actors. He's also Brian. Remember that movie, The Returner?
Oh yeah, I have that.
Yeah, he's in that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'm gonna end up checking that out based on your recommendations.
Yeah.
Lisa, your number 2.
My number 2 is one I picked pretty much just for fun and for the opportunity to, because I like this movie. It's number 30, I think, in my top 25. No, wait, it's number 31 in my top 25. But I really like this film, and I can't stop talking about it. And it is Tragedy Girls.
Yes.
I love this movie. So, you guys have heard us talk about it a lot. It's about 2 girls who conspire to become serial killers in order for likes on social media. Mm-hmm. That's really a bare bones description of it. But what I love about it is that it's stylish and it's funny and it's really clever while still having a lot of heart and a lot of the romance of the female relationship in high school. I found really interesting. So we did have the opportunity to do a chat cast with the director, Tyler McIntyre, with the Indie Dork and the Disco Dork for Shallow Pocket Projects. And I think that it resulted in a really wonderful conversation, real nerdy conversation about not just tragedy girls, but horror film in general.
Yep.
And also, I wrote a review for After Movie Diner if you want to know my further thoughts on it. But I'm getting tired, guys. But watch this movie. It'll make you want to put on a prom dress and a mask and get some and make your dreams come true. That's what I think. Tragedy Girls, my number 2, my not top 10.
All right.
And number 31 on my top 25.
Brad, you're number 2?
My number 2 is without a doubt my least favorite film of the year.
Damn.
I hate this film.
Uh-oh.
The film makes me angry. It's such a tragic waste of the source material. I want to get high and mighty with my hatred, but it is The Dark Tower.
Damn.
But is it The Dark Tower?
No.
Not really. It's certainly not anything recognizable from the books. Yes, there is a gunslinger played by Idris Elba, and we love Idris. I mean, he is the coolest dude walking the earth today. He's probably would make a great gunslinger in another film. Mm-hmm. Matthew McConaughey is playing Walter, the Man in Black, a.k.a. Randall Flagg. And he is so terrible. And we love Matthew McConaughey in a variety of performances, but not here. And, they made the kid the focus of the story for some reason when it should totally be Roland as the protagonist, but instead we're following Jake as if this was some YA story. And that is so aggressively wrong-headed and infuriating. There's this weird game of nudge, nudge, wink, wink Stephen King references throughout the film because anybody who's familiar with those novels knows that The Dark Tower connects the entire Stephen King universe. It's one of the original shared universes out there in pop culture. And I guess the filmmakers wanted to tap into that in some fashion, but fail so miserably. And, it's a super short movie. It's like 88 minutes. And I just cannot figure how or why this even happened in the first place. It was one of those properties for like the last 10 years we've been hearing, Ron Howard's attached. Javier Bardem's going to do it. They're going to do a movie and a TV show, then a movie again. And like none of that happened. And what we got was this extremely pathetic, shitty piece of junk with the name The Dark Tower slapped on it, and it's an embarrassment. And for somebody who loves those books so much, it's going to set back any potential honest adaptation of those stories for years, if not decades.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I was disappointed. I thought it was just okay. I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was, but as far as the potential of that movie, it nowhere near lived up to it. Totally failed on that front. My number 2 is not a Lost Weekend, a Fantastic Fest film. Matwetwe, translated Wizard.
Yay!
You caught this one too, Lisa?
Yeah, I love this movie. I almost included this in my not top 10, but it didn't, which I'm glad you're talking about it, so I can take over and I can talk about it.
Yes, please, by all means. Wizard is a coming-of-age film about Lefa and Poppy. They're best friends. They just got out of high school, and they're, I guess, trying to decide what they want to do with their lives. Poppy is skilled in botany. He has a green thumb, and his best friend wants to capitalize on that and grow marijuana and sell it. And just they basically they get into it with some local gangsters, and then hijinks ensue. But that's a very broad overview of what the movie is. It's a really good movie. It brings to mind another film that we saw, Young Offenders, in which you have two two like juvenile delinquents who, at the end of the day, have a strong friendship that bonds them and gets them through a really like crazy misadventure. But the way that this movie is, the storytelling in this film and the pacing of it is directed by Kagiso Lediga, and I just it was one of those experiences in Fantastic Fest where you don't know anything about the movie, but then you just get floored by some a unique voice in storytelling, and it's it's just a fun movie. It's just an amazingly fun movie. You have this narrative device where you have these three people sitting on a step, and they're talking to the audience, telling a story. They're telling this story, and they sometimes are weaved in and out of the actual story that they're telling. They interact with the characters at certain points, but then again they break the fourth wall and they talk to the audience, and they're just as much fun as the main characters. Every time they came on screen, like my face, I cracked a smile because the movie is just populated with a bunch of really interesting and fun characters. I had a blast watching this film. Lisa, you obviously loved it too.
Yeah. Oh no, I really enjoyed this film. I think it must have been, if it wasn't my last day of Fantastic Fest, it was like the second to last day.
Yeah.
And the director had stayed like the whole time. And I thought it was so wonderful. So there was like, everybody's running out of steam. There must have been, and this was like a 10 a.m. movie or something like that. So there were like 8 people in the theater. And it was a breath of fresh air. I love plots and schemes. Mm-hmm. There's like a lot of, hijinks in this film. Which I enjoy. Also, all of the music throughout the film is all South African pop music.
That's right.
And it is so good. It is so much fun.
And I don't know if I mentioned that this is a South African a production, a movie. Yeah.
Yes. And it's just absolutely amazing. And I watch the credits and none of the music is credited. So I'm just like, I can't find any of these songs anywhere. But I just really, I thought it was a fun movie, really funny and heartfelt and really just nice. Good movie.
I hope, I doubt that it gets a theatrical release. It is a 2017 film. And so, I doubt it gets a theatrical release. But if it does, it end up on Netflix or Amazon, please check this movie out. It is a really fun and good film. That's my number 2.
You won't be sorry.
You will not be sorry. Brian.
Yeah.
Your number 1 film, not number 1. You're not number 1 on your not top 10 of 2017. I don't know what it could be.
Well, I guess once I categorize it, you might know. So yeah, as we get to the end of this episode, and I'm closing out my list. I really didn't want to close out on a downer, but I do want to talk about my most disappointed film and I have to talk about this because this is a franchise I adore and I love, and we've talked about it before, and you've already mentioned it, Darren, is The Fate of the Furious. My most disappointed film. Everybody knows I love this franchise, all the way up, even with the problems that I've had with the 7th film. And I could say that just with one film, it has basically killed any anticipation I have for any further films in this franchise. And I hate to say that due to one film, but if they're going to continue this franchise in the direction that this last movie went, I don't want to have anything else to do with this. I enjoyed what Justin Lin and what Justin Lin did taking over from the 3rd film. 1 through 7, I think, is a fantastic saga of these characters. What F. Gary Gray and everybody has done in this 8th movie, I feel like they just took everything that was great about those previous films and just made a parody of it. in this movie. I remember during our review cast, Brad, you mentioned something about how the look of this film when you see that opening scene in Cuba, and watching this film on the big screen, it is so apparent that this looks like a TV movie.
Yeah.
The movie is so flat that there's no style to this movie at all that was given to us from Justin Lin from all the other films. And as absurd as you can say about the action and the characters or whatever you want to say, there was, and you talked about it too, Darren, as far as like the idea of family and family this and family that. When you look at what Justin Lin did in 4, 5, and 6, and really is trying to establish who these characters are and the bond between them, and really being able to connect with them, that you buy into the absurdity of the action because you care about these characters. Now, in this 8th movie, they're getting chased by submarines. They're doing all this stuff. And then you bring in Jason Statham because he's a cool character, but then you're undermining what he did in the previous films of the franchise by killing Han. So it's just like, what are you doing with these characters? I don't understand. And Chris Morgan has been with the franchise from the beginning, and he's a producer and the writer. So it's almost like, to me, it feels like they're listening to their fan base too much. And there's a great quote by Bill Parcells, who's a football coach. He says, any coach who listens to the fans are doomed to be sitting in the stands with the fans. Because, and that's the same thing. I apply that to directors and these content creators and producers. Like, yeah, you want to listen to your fan base, but if you start changing the course of what your franchise is because of how fans are seeing it, if fans see this as, oh yeah, this is just dumb fun and it's absurd, and then you as a director, as a writer, say, you know what, let's just take people, they expect this, let's just take it in that direction. No, you don't do that. You continue on the trajectory of these films that you were going. I understand Paul Walker, the loss of him, which is probably one of the most devastating losses by, as far as like an actor dying, like that really affected me because of how much I love this franchise. And I just liked him as an actor. I thought one of his great films was Running Scared.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just feel like, because of losing Paul Walker and that what they had to do with 7 and then going into this, and then outside of that, building this fake feud between The Rock and Vin Diesel, all this stuff to bring in this publicity and marketing, and
You think that shit was fake?
I think it was fake.
Oh, definitely.
I think at least the stuff between Vin Diesel and The Rock, like all that stuff was perpetuated. It wasn't real. I think they were doing that to try to sell tickets, to really just try to keep this franchise relevant. And it's disheartening to me as a fan. It's extremely disheartening. And at this point, I'm kind of done. I'm just kind of done with it.
It would take a really great movie to correct this ship. And man, Scott Eastwood better not come back.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on that. It's just this movie just fails at every turn. It really does. And I have it on Blu-ray.
Dude, I have all of them but this one.
Damn.
Yeah, but yeah. 1 through 7, I love them. I love them.
All right, Lisa, let's hear it.
Yes,
Your
my number one. So my number one right now as it stands is my number 11 film. So this just didn't make it on my not top 10. But you've heard my other movies that, Tragedy Girls is my number 31. So I've got some great movies on this list. This list isn't set in stone. There's still shit that I have not seen, like Call Me by Your Name. Yeah. I'm going to be seeing this weekend, and I'm guessing that it's going to hopefully shake up my top 25.
Yeah, and Lisa, Beyond Skyline is at the AMC Hoffman.
Oh,
what? Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
I'm seeing it.
Yeah. I need to check that out.
That trailer looks shitty. Anyway, Lisa.
There's also stuff I need to rewatch. Brad got to rewatch Personal Shopper today while I was at work. I would love to rewatch that. But as it stands now, this is my number 11. And my number 11 is Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I really enjoyed this Marvel movie. I was kind of in the Brad boat with the being like highly anticipating Thor Ragnarok and having it not deliver. But then we did get 2 really great chapters in the Marvel saga. Spoiler alert, I guess, because I haven't talked about the other one. But anyway, one of them is for sure Spider-Man Homecoming. I think that this was really nailed the genre blend of the John Hughesy teen flick plus the superhero flick. And I thought it was a real fresh take on Spider-Man, a superhero that, before this film, people would say is pretty played out cinematically, especially, in recent memory. Yeah. So I think that they really nailed it. I think Tom Holland is a really wonderful Peter Parker. The fact that they found someone who was like a real life Spider-Man. He can do the physical demands as well as, deliver the character, be snarky and funny and young and naive and all of those wonderful things, and do a badass flip. Hey, Spider-Man, do a flip.
Yep.
I think that Michael Keaton as the Vulture, as Adrian Toomes, is a really interesting villain, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. So there's so much about this movie that I just feel like they really got right. And I love Jacob Batalon as Ned. What a wonderful friend. Yes. And, even though he's Ned, he's ganky from, there's so much potential coming from the Spider-Man story. It can go in so many wonderful directions, and I'm looking forward to seeing these characters in these being folded into the Marvel universe even further. So, yay! That's my now top 10.
Great pick. Brad,
thank you.
Your number 1.
So for my number 1 on my not top 10 of 2017, I'm using the same logic that Lisa just did. This is my 11th favorite film of the year as it stands. It is certainly the most beautiful film of the year, and in some ways, one of the most surprising films. I should have had faith because I love the filmmaker so much. But that is Blade Runner 2049 from director Denis Villeneuve and cinematographer Roger Deakins, starring Ryan Gosling. I almost blanked on his name for a second. Woo! As Kay. And this is one of those movies where I really wish the marketing had kept Harrison Ford out of it, because he is not. He's a presence in this film, and he's a crucial aspect to this film, certainly. But how amazing would it have been to reach the third act of this movie and for Harrison Ford to step out of the shadows? Like that, it would have been, a Split-like amazement that I would not have believed. But the marketing had spoiled that, and as is, it still all works. There's a fringe universe where that was a surprise to me that I would have really cherished. The surprising thing about Blade Runner 2049 is it doesn't necessarily answer the questions that are left hanging at the end of Blade Runner, or maybe not hanging during Blade Runner, and provides some new ones for you to contemplate. The relationships between Kay and his holographic lady Joy, that was a relationship I was not expecting in this film, and really a lot of the emotion hangs on that relationship, and how that relationship applies to what does it mean to be human to another level that the replicants that was the conversation from the original film. And you watch something like Alien Covenant and Prometheus from Ridley Scott, and he's obviously trying to work out these concepts of AI in the context within the Alien franchise. And here comes Denis Villeneuve and beats him at his own game with his own property. I know Scott produced this film, but it truly is a Villeneuve product. It manages to extend the style of the first film. It doesn't feel like they're two separate universes. It feels like the logical extension of both technology, but also the film noir aesthetic, without being just a copy of a film noir aesthetic. And the ultimate conclusion for Kay's character, who thinks he's this special creature on this earth, for his revelation at the end is beautiful and sad and tragic and heroic all at once.
Yeah.
I really, 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 really wish I had had an opportunity to see it a second time on the big screen. It just came at one of those points in my fall that I just could not find a way back to for a second show. But I can't wait to get that Blu-ray because it's going to look gorgeous in high def.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh yes, man. Yeah, I same here. B like I wanted to go back and see it again, but with the runtime and then with other movies coming out after that release, they would bump a showing of Blade Runner to like a 9:30 slot or a 10 o'clock slot. And I just couldn't do that during my weekly schedule, so I was not able to catch it a second time in theaters. But I am looking forward to that freaking 4K disc. Oh my goodness!
And the thing about this film, which I know puts folks off, is that runtime and is the pace, and it's kind of like A Cure for Wellness, where the film is not going to speed along. It is properly paced. And it's probably an 88-minute plot stretched out into this epic saga. Yeah. There's not much to the narrative from a plot standpoint, but from a character and a style standpoint, it is such. The word is sumptuous. It is a sumptuous movie, and it is a wholly cinematic experience.
Agreed. All right. Well, my number one. I already know what the reaction to this is going to be. And this was basically my 11. It just barely made my top 10 list.
I have no idea what you're going to say.
It is War for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. We have a new trilogy of ape films, and they have been getting better with each subsequent film. The first one I was okay with. I could live without it if I never saw it again. I enjoyed it for what it was. James Franco was okay in it. I really like John Lithgow, and then Caesar as a character and what Andy Serkis did with him and that performance capture was extremely compelling. I mean, he just keeps getting better and better at his craft. And then we jump to Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and at that point, that was my favorite of the two films. I love the stuff with Koba. I love the stuff with Caesar. I love the stuff with Maurice. The effects got even better, and Gary Oldman's character and all the performances were great. Jason Clarke I was sad that he wasn't coming back for the next film because I really enjoyed him in that film. And I remember seeing the footage at Comic-Con for that film and just being really excited by just the look of the film and how it was such a departure from the first one. And so that movie came out, and again I really enjoyed that one. So then we get the War for the Planet of the Apes, and there's a time jump, and with that time jump comes a natural evolution of Caesar, and then we get the rest of the story, which is a progression of his character. But we also get introduced to some new characters, and Rocket. We talked about this on our review cast for the film, but his character arc from the first film and what he would become to Caesar in this film, was something that was unexpected, but really enjoyable. The performances in it were great, and I love the fact that we got a movie where a non-human character, a CGI character, was front and center and the driving force with the narrative and got the most screen time. It's almost every scene featured a CGI character, which for me it should tell Hollywood that okay, like you can go back to the drawing board, reboot Transformers, and just give me a movie with robots in it. I don't need a human to drive the story along. But with War for the Planet of the Apes, they proved that this can be done. You can have a compelling story and a compelling character, and the audience will buy into it and go along with it and sympathize and cheer for and care about Andy Serkis in motion capture. And it's a beautiful film. I don't have the history with that franchise that Mouth Dork does. His reaction to the film and this trilogy in general gave me a new perspective on it. Because hearing him talk about it post seeing War for the Planet of the Apes and his look at the entire trilogy is something that makes me want to go back and rewatch them all back to back to back. And luckily, there's a 4K set with all three films coming out. I'm gonna grab that up and rewatch all of them back to back to back post haste to see how the character of Caesar goes from his narrative journey in the first film to his beautifully tragic, not even tragic. I mean, it's just a beautiful ending in War for the Planet of the Apes. But yeah, I think I saw this twice in theaters. I'm not sure, but I have the 4K disc. I haven't watched it yet. But I have a sneaking suspicion that had I watched it before I put this list together, had I rewatched it, it might have bumped one of the ones that's on my top 10 off and moved up. Because I do remember being moved watching that film. Actually, we did see it twice. I saw it at the Alamo 2 times. I saw it once at the Alamo and once in Dolby Prime. But a gorgeous film, outstanding performances, and amazing special effects. One of the best of 2017, absolutely. That's my number one of my not top 10.
Yay.
Listeners, hit us up on social media. You have some time before we hit you with the Dorkies, our top 10 films of 2017. So let us know as you compile your list of 2017. Also put together a list, if you will, of the ones that just didn't make it, either because your top 10 was just so good or because these other 10 movies were so shitty. Or anywhere in between. Hit us up on social media and share your not top 10 at ItModcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. You can catch Brian at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at the Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. And Lisa is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd, and Brad Gullickson is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. And I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, on all social medias. That's going to do it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We will be back. We're going to take a brief hiatus for the holiday, and then we'll meet you again at the beginning of the year, 2018. I guess we'll see you next year, and that's when we will drop our epic two-parter, The Dorkies. So be on the lookout for that. Anything you want to add, ladies and gentlemen? Brad? Brian?
Happy New Year, guys.
Yay!
Yeah.
Happy New Year!
It's been a great year in Dork.
It really, really has.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about 2018 and all that it has to offer. So, yeah, enjoy the rest of your holiday. Be safe, be peaceful, be loving to each other, be kind, and go watch movies, okay?
Yes.
And until next time.